All right. Good morning, everybody. We need to do our gifted training for the year. So what you're looking at here is a training that I went to 2 or 3 years ago with Robin from the State Department, but she is no longer there. They just had that position open this summer, and there's no new slides out yet. So we're going to go through these. If you have any other questions, though, I can direct you to the State Department website for more information. And I have a ton of books in my room that I've got from classes that I've taken. So we were ordered by the Office of Civil Rights to look at our information as a district on um, who was identified and gifted by gifted services and who was not, and how that met up with our demographics. And we found that it's not evenly weighted. There were more of certain groups of students being identified as gifted and less of others, and there was no tracking of students. So when we changed over to Infinite Campus, it's been way easier to identify those students because there's a little icon at the top of most students' pages. And there's still difficulty when they're transferring in, sometimes, of getting those records. But it's going to be a little bit easier for you guys to understand where to find these students and how to serve them this year. All right, so if we were doing this in person, you would kind of share out what your current thoughts on gifted education were, specifically at Grant and maybe in other schools that you had been on, but we are not in person. So here are 10 myths about gifted students. The first one is that teachers challenge all students. Well, the truth of it is that most teachers have not been prepared to work with advanced students. Gifted students not only learn more quickly than other students, they learn differently. So we know that the majority of classroom teachers have never had any training on how to work with students who have been identified as gifted, and they're unable to recognize and support the gifted learners without specialized training. So here's another one, that gifted students are role models for other students. Well, the truth is that average or below average students don't look to the gifted students as role models. Uh, they watch them, but it doesn't increase anybody's confidence, and that relationship doesn't really match up to say, hey, because I'm gifted, I can help you. It just doesn't work like that. So we also hear people say that all children are gifted. My son or daughter are gifted. My student is gifted. They're super awesome. Well, yes. Okay. All students have strengths and weaknesses that they can provide to a group. But in the academic sense of the word, gifted, okay, is applied when a child has an advanced capability to learn and apply what is learned in one or more subject areas, or in the performing or fine arts compared to others his or her age or grade. Okay. So the definition is what's used by the district, not just because you think a kid can learn faster. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are gifted. Okay. Also, one other thing is that just because a student is gifted doesn't mean they're good or better than any of the other students in your classroom. Okay, it just means that you need to adjust the services that you're providing them to meet their needs. Here's another one. The gifted students are happy, popular, and well adjusted. Well, what we know is that the truth is that schools can be a negative experience for some gifted students because they don't meet the expectations of teachers or themselves, perhaps. They don't share interests with their classmates. So if your brain is thinking at a very higher advanced level about like physics and such, but you're sat in a very low level science class, then you're going to have a negative relationship between school and yourself. Also, sometimes some of the gifted kids get bullied because they are nerds, and people just pick on them and make little comments to them, which really can hurt them in the long run. So this is a big one that we see. If you need any help with this one, you can see Miss Robin Jones. So a child receiving special education services cannot also be gifted. The truth is, we have a lot of twice exceptional students, is what they're called, and when they have two codings, but we also have students who are ELL, special ed, and gifted. So it's hard to meet their needs in all of those areas sometimes because we don't all know what to do. So if you need help with a student who is also special ed and gifted, please reach out to Miss Robin Jones. She's over here on J Hall, second floor with me. And we would be happy to try to work with you to make a plan. I know a lot of you are worried about this for the online coursework, but we'll figure it out and we'll get it there. Okay. Gifted children will do fine on their own is another misconception. Gifted children cannot teach themselves in most cases. Okay, there are some kids that I've met in my life who will just sit down and read a very technical text and be able to explain everything about it to you. But often they need guidance from teachers to help develop their abilities. Okay. They might learn new concept quickly, but they're made to wait until all the classmates catch up. So you need to be careful about that in your classroom. And often students who are bored and frustrated can produce very poor work because they don't care. I, for instance, moved myself down to a level senior English class because I didn't like the senior English AP teacher at my high school, and my sister had a very bad experience with her. And I almost failed my English class after taking a previous AP course in a gifted setting because I thought that the teacher was teaching us some very not English related things and was testing us on history and not having us write enough. And so I ended up turning in almost nothing because I thought the work was very boring and inappropriate for an English classroom. So just keep that in mind when you're working with these students. Academic acceleration is socially harmful. We hear that mostly with younger kids. So by the time they get to us, it's a little bit different. But the truth is that a lot of those kids really want to be with older kids because they share interests and abilities. Um, but then there's also some emotional things that may have trouble, which is why sometimes people say that younger kids shouldn't be pushed up grade levels. But for some students that works, and that's something that they work on in the lower grades. Gifted education programs are elitist. Well, they help all high ability students, so they do only help small groups of students. Um, but at the high school level, we start to offer AP courses and clubs for all students. Um, there is funding that is specifically for gifted education, but again, that usually goes to AP programs, which we have for everyone here. Okay. Number 9 is students getting poor or average grades cannot be gifted. Well, I already told you my example. I had horrible grades in that senior English class, which dropped my ranking a lot because I did not enjoy it. Also, sometimes the students might become frustrated because they're in too many advanced classes, and so the one starts to suffer. Um, and sometimes students are not gifted in the area that you are. Like sometimes kids are gifted in math, but they're horrible in the English area. Or some people are gifted in art and then don't do well in math. So just because they're gifted doesn't mean they're good in every single class. Okay. Gifted education programs require an abundance of resources. Well, that's not true. We can ask students what they want to do here at the high school level. When you're talking about a certain subject, perhaps.
Ability coach will have a ready football coach. You have kids waiting by the bathroom door or wherever you guys walk them in, I think. Thanks. Can you meet them there, please?
All right. So we know that we can adapt and make it work for the kids and just ask them what they need. That's the biggest thing. By the time they get to high school, they're usually able to say, hey, I would rather do this type of presentation for you than this and still meet your expectations to show that they've understood. I cannot see my whole screen.